Good morning. Good morning and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us here for the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum President's Day Festival. Warm welcome to all of you here in person and a big welcome to all of you joining us online as well. I'm Kennedy Library Forum Producer Liz Murphy, and it's now my great honor to introduce our guest for this next segment, 16th President Abraham Lincoln. Mr. President, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. Please join me in welcoming our special guest.
Well, thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, and I trust that I will continue on my journey to Washington without any further incidents. You know, nobody ever expected me to be president. I stand before you probably about the humblest individual to have ever been elevated to the office of the United States presidency. I've been called unqualified, unprepared, uneducated, uncouth, unattractive, all of which are probably true. But actually, I did have a little bit more schooling than some might imagine. It came to about a year. Some of you probably had more than I did. But I'm what they call a self-made man. I happened to mention this one time before I was elected, and a fella come up to me afterward and he said, "Did I hear you saying there you were a self-made man?" And I said, "Well, sir, what there is of me is pretty much self-made." He said, "Well, I think you did a blame poor job of it." Then he said, "I wouldn't vote for you if you were St. Peter himself." I looked at him, I said, "Well, all I can say is, if I were St. Peter, you probably wouldn't be in my district anyway." But we live in momentous times. The political drama being enacted in this country just now is very rapidly shifting in its scenes. It's becoming rather forbidding, at least if we have any expectation today of what we hope to see tomorrow. There has been a good deal of apprehension of late that with the coming of a Republican administration, there may not be liberty and justice for all. In fact, some of our Southern friends seem to feel that with a Republican administration, their lives, their property, their personal security may somehow become endangered. Now, friends, there has never been any just cause for this sort of apprehension that seems to be rising amongst the people as we get closer to my inauguration in March. In fact, ample evidence to the very contrary position has all the while been open to people's inspection. And by that, I mean in the form of nearly every published speech of the man who is now addressing you. All anybody who objects has to do is go look at it in the latest newspapers. But you see, there are those among us now who are seeking to dissolve the Union, and they are going about misrepresenting the objects and purposes of the Republican Party, hoping to scare people into some sort of precipitate action to do things that they never would have done had they been more careful and thoughtful about it. Because I think they understand that once this administration does get inaugurated, they will no longer have any reason for this sort of terrorism that they're spreading amongst people. Now, it's true that the Republican Party is against the spread of slavery. We hold it to be a moral, a social, a political evil. But friends, we have proper consideration for its actual presence among us, for the terrible difficulties of ever getting rid of this thing in any satisfactory way, for all the constitutional obligations that have been thrown around this peculiar institution. However, we do look for a policy that will treat slavery as a wrong. And our great object is to prevent its farther spread, in particular out in the Western Territories, where our votes can reach it without upsetting anything. And that, I think, is what has created so much difficulty. The fact that we have taken a position that slavery is wrong. There are those that say, I wish you would simply stop calling it wrong. You don't even have it up there in the north. But we do have it down here in the south, and it's protected by law. They don't wish it to be called wrong anywhere in politics, frankly. Well, that's dragging morality into politics. Goodness knows, I guess we don't want any of that. But of course, you can't speak of it as wrong from the pulpit neither. That would be dragging politics into religion. We can't have that neither. So you can't call it wrong in politics, nor in a moral center, nor in tract societies. Oh, they're leaking into the South. In ladies' societies, that would be improper for ladies. It's gotten so there is no place left in the country where a man can stand up and call a wrong a wrong. If we do so, we're pushing our objects and desires upon them. Well, my friends, I don't have to remind any of us, at least the older one among us, that it wasn't that long ago when there were, I think it was a majority of southern states who voted unanimously with the North in outlawing African slave trade. Now, why did they do that if they didn't think there was something wrong with it? If it was just a matter of importing property, so-called, from Africa and selling it to people here who would like to buy it? Why did they make it a matter of piracy, punishable by hanging, to do this if it's just a matter of importing property? We don't do that if somebody brings buffalo in from Kansas Territory or bears from Wisconsin and sell it. But there's a qualitative difference. These are people that we're talking about. But my friends, it was almost unanimously that they voted against African slave trade. Now, if slavery is right, such a vote should be wrong. If slavery is actually right, and we should not be speaking against it, then all laws against the African slave trade, all state constitutions against slavery per se, are wrong and ought to be abolished and swept away. There's no justification for allowing the African slave trade or slavery per se anywhere except on the basis that it's wrong. And wherever you diminish or obfuscate or cloud the idea that this thing is wrong, ultimately you will wipe away all prohibitions against it. And for that reason, the Republican Party continues to maintain that this is a terrible moral wrong. That is the central doctrine of the Republican platform. And it's not such a profound truth. But as wrong as we believe it to be, we will not touch it in the places where it is already protected by law. The Constitution forbids it, and right now the peace of the country forbids it. But, my friends, this policy, I believe, as we have seen it thus far, is in danger of being swept away. I think if one will simply look at history over the past 10 years, it becomes clear that we are in present danger of seeing slavery become national in this country. You know, they're making trouble down in South Carolina right now. Preston Brooks of South Carolina himself said that when this national constitution was first formed, there was not a man then living who thought that slavery would last till the present. And that's been, 80-odd years? Because they set up a system that would ultimately bring it to an end. But that's not what happened. Over a course of time, it has made steady encroachments, and it was ultimately the repeal of the Missouri Compromise that turned the tide and allowed slavery and the expectation that slavery would continue on into the vast unknown future to continue. I said so back in Illinois, 2 years ago now. And my friends, that's what has begun this war between Senator Douglas and myself. He began quoting from that speech. He quoted that, I don't say he willfully misquoted it, but his perversions upon it were so numerous, as much as he warred against it like Satan does against the Bible. And he quoted it so often, I could probably quote the entirety of it from memory. Well, in fact, let me quote to you the portion which was so objectionable to him. I said this in the state legislature in Illinois. I said, we are now well into our 5th year since the policy was inaugurated with the avowed object and confident purpose of putting an end to all this slavery agitation. However, under the operation of that policy, that agitation has not only not ceased, it is constantly augmented. And in my opinion, it will not cease until a crisis shall have been reached and passed. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall. But I do expect it will cease to be divided. It'll become all one thing or all the other. Either the opponents of slavery are going to arrest its farther spread and place it where the public mind shall once again be at rest in the belief that it is indeed on a course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates are going to press it forward until it becomes alike lawful in all of the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. Now, that particular extract and the sentiments expressed therein are what was so objectionable to Senator Douglas. He concluded, from what I just quoted to you, that it was my intention to bring about a state of, first of all, to make all of the states of this union absolutely uniform in their internal regulations, by which he meant slavery. Now, if you simply reflect on what I just finished saying, I said I expected something would happen. There's a difference between an expectation and an intention or a wish or a purpose to do something. I've often expressed an expectation to die, but not a wish to die. I mean, with that kind of logic, you can take a horse chestnut and turn it into a chestnut horse. He also, now this is again based on what I just quoted to you, said that he believed that it was my intention to bring about a state of war between the South and the North, to invite the South to make war upon the North for the extension of slavery, and then to invite the North to resist the South in order to exterminate slavery. And then he accuses me of being a two-faced man. Listen, my friends, if I had another face, you think I'd wear this one? Now, when any man publicly proclaims that it is my intention to bring about a state of war, and there are a good many who seem to be afraid of it, all I can say is the Republican Party is eminently conservative. All we are wishing to do is return the national policy to what it once was regarding slavery. Now, did we have war out of it before the repeal of the Missouri Compromise? No. For some 80-odd years, we've had this same policy. Wherein is the expectation that we shall have war out of it now if we stop the farther spread of it? All of this talk is a ruse. Now, what do I mean by that? Senator Douglas claims that the right to go out into the territories and make slaves out of other people is a sacred right of self-government ordained by the Almighty Himself, and that to limit it is a breach of something that's very old. He says when the Almighty first created a man, He set him in a garden, and He set good and evil before him, and He told him, you're perfectly free to choose. Well, there is some truth to that. However, what He didn't mention was this. The Almighty said, of all the trees of the garden thou mayest surely eat, but in the day thou eatest thereof, this particular tree, thou shalt surely die. Oh. Well, that colors perfect liberty a little differently. I don't suppose that's the sort of perfect liberty that the Douglas Democrats have been looking for. I'll tell you another reason why I think it's a ruse. Let me ask you this. If the people of Utah Territory shall convene and draft a state government in which they allow polygamy, now, is that going to be a sacred right of self-government, according to Senator Douglas? There's nothing in United States law or any of our constitutions that I know of against polygamy. Why wouldn't that be the same sacred right of self-government as slavery? I'll tell you why. Any man so bold as to stand up in the United States Senate and say it's a sacred right of self-government to have as many wives as you want, he might get his point across, but he probably won't be getting his supper that night. Because perhaps the men don't know that there's something wrong with it, but the women sure do. So that's why I believe it's just a ruse, a disguise to perpetrate and extend the slave powers until it becomes universal in this country. Now, my friends, the Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Since that was written, we've grown rather fat. Nobody here in particular I'm not referring to. As a nation, we've become fattened, sleek. We forgot what it was like to live under the tyranny of King George. And now the successor to the leadership of that very same party who drafted that, Mr. Jefferson, has come along and said, all men are created equal, except for black ones. Well, who knows where, if we admit of that, who knows where it will stop? Why cannot somebody else come along and say, all men are created equal, except black ones, and Irish, and Germans, and you know, if it ever came to that, I think I would just as soon emigrate to some other country. You know, in Russia they have a czar. I could go there. You can take your tyranny pure there. It's not adulterated with the base alloy of hypocrisy. And that's the great question that stands before us today. So, my friends, as we look at the principles that are found in the Declaration, those are the same principles that the Republican Party stands for today. I believe that that great declaration that all men are created equal remains the great fundamental principle upon which all of our future liberties rest. The question before us, my friends, is this: cannot this government be sustained, this society be sustained, without giving up that principle? It's really nothing more than a political application of the Savior's ancient maxim, whatsoever you would that men should do unto you, do ye also unto them. If we can save this republic and retain that principle, I will consider myself one of the happiest men alive if I can help to so do. But if it cannot, if we cannot continue on without giving up that fundamental principle of life, well, I was about to say I would rather be assassinated on this very spot than to ever surrender that. Well, my countrymen, one and all, we must think calmly and well on this whole subject. Nothing valuable can be lost if we simply take time. Now, if there are those who are wishing to push or precipitate you into making a decision that you would not otherwise ordinarily make, but pressure you into something, perhaps that could be lost by taking time. But no good object will be lost by simply taking time, waiting for this administration to be inaugurated and to see that it is not what they've been saying. My friends, intelligence, patriotism, Christianity, and a firm reliance on Him who has never yet forsaken this favored land are still competent to adjust in the very best way all of our present difficulties. We're not enemies, but friends. We must not become enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. Surely the mystic cords of memory, stretching over every battlefield and every patriot grave, to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the course of union. When touched, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. Thank you. We have time for maybe 2 questions. If anybody wishes to tender anything, I will be happy to answer. Otherwise, there will be a press conference in a few moments, so you can discuss amongst yourselves how you may entrap me Well, thank you very kindly. Oh, was there one over here? Somebody was pointing to. You have to. Was there one over there? Speak up.
So, what happened during the Declaration of Independence?
What happened during the Declaration of Independence? Well, it wasn't pretty, I'll tell you that. The Declaration was a profound, how shall I put this? It changed everything, the way the world was thinking. Before that time, they believed in what they called the divine right of kings, that certain people had the right to rule over everybody else because of their birth. And what Mr. Jefferson stated when he wrote that declaration about equality was it erased that concept. And it said, everyone deserves an equal start in the great race of life. From that point on, you're on your own. And you may rise to the top, you may rise to the middle, but you deserve an equal chance. That wasn't true in the old world. So it was revolutionary. And there was a great revolution that followed it too. Very costly. Yep. Well, thank you. Good day.